With a 560 here, I'm going to make sure that this is exactly where I want to put it so that the media drops right at the end of the core. This is very important. I do use the skew as a basis to making sure it's accurate, but the most important accuracy for me is as it drops down to the take-up roll. And that's also very true of the 360, 365. I'm going to get it on the take-up roll, and then if I have to, I will lift the lever and kind of bounce it so that the top and the bottom are exactly where they need to be. I want that core to be exactly, that material to go almost right onto the edge of the core. I will give it just a hair because I don't want the material riding on the edge on either side. The other thing I do, and let me show you because I'm going to kind of direct attention to the other side of the material here on the edge of the core, is you see on this end here how I have all that exposed core? Now I don't have my my little Japanese pull saw here to trim that off, but normally I would. I want to make sure that the core that's feeding it, let's say the core that's feeding it is exactly 54 inches. Then I'm going to cut this bottom core like 54 1/8, maybe 54 1/4 tops. I want the top core and the bottom core to be the same size. I'll give the bottom core just a little bit of play, just a little bit of wiggle room, but not much. And the reason why is anytime you give the opening for a double-sided banner to walk, it's going to walk. It just does. So if I give it room on that far end to drift off, it's going to try to drift off. And I don't want anything drifting off. I want the top and the bottom to be in perfect alignment with one another throughout the roll. I do not want it drifting. For that reason, I do tend to cut the bottom core to perfectly mirror the top core. 1/4 inch, that's all you need. You don't want it to ride the end caps. Okay, that's not good either. But if you align everything down, lift your lever, or with a 560, I release the media and I get it perfectly lined up from top to bottom. So when I use the core on the right-hand side here, facing it, to determine my alignment and make sure everything from top to bottom is perfectly directed a straight line. The next thing you want to do, and this is kind of important, this is why I have this here. You have two other variables. Let me spin this around and I'll show you the top here. The first variable is the top one. If you have a media that's on a core on your feed roll and you have a core exposed and then the media starts, it makes it difficult to put it on the take-up in exactly the same spot. That's why I would usually, in those cases, I would take your saw and saw straight so your core and your roll are perfectly flush or very close to it. Because you want to put your take-up core so that it drops straight down here, and you want to give yourself just enough room so you clear the end cap. The other thing is when you have a core that's not it's completely flush, what happens is it pushes up against this unevenly, and you have this kind of movement there. You got too much play because the core doesn't come right up against this and all points flush, and then as it turns, it doesn't quite track accurately. So make sure you, when you cut, do your cuts. If you have to, use a circular saw, but try to strive to get a nice, clean, straight cut so that everything comes up flush here. This particular cap can be adjusted to two positions. If the roll is not the full width of it, always come into the inside position if you can. Keep in mind, you don't have a lot of room from the inside position to where the media needs to be, or the printer will tell you it doesn't like that positioning. It'll tell you to move it over, in which case you might have to slide this up and put it on the other setting. But try not to have play here. Play is the enemy of a perfectly traveling media from top to bottom. The next thing is this other cap. This is more of a concern for me. In another video, I show this cap actually with a little kind of piece of tape on it. What tends to happen over time is people will put these on and then secure it, and then when they pull it off, they forget to take the spring off. And if you do it enough times, eventually the cap loses its effectiveness to grip onto here. You know, if I could, I would make this a little stronger, a little more secure. But a lot of my caps, I also have done that. I've forgotten to release it, and I've pulled on it, and now they're not very effective. That is, if you were to put like an 80-pound roll of adhesive, or excuse me, double-sided banner, blockout banner, and you're printing, and especially if your printer is not completely level, and that's another thing, you do want to have your printer completely level to the ground, because if that roll starts moving and it has some weight, and you're not completely level, as the printer prints, the roll will tend to kind of drift over a little bit. And you'll find that over time, this is how the roll looks, it will have moved this way. And if this cap is not secure, it's going to give. And it's going to allow it to work that way. And then you'll come over after running like half a roll, and you'll see that you're not aligned down here anymore. The roll has moved this way, and with it, the cap is walking. This is a classic problem with double-sided printing, and I've encountered it myself. So that's why when I put this on, especially for double-sided, I do tend to take some tape. Well, I said it somewhere. I take some tape, decent adhesive, not too gluey. I mean, you don't want to put duct tape or something and leave a bunch of goop all over this thing, but you want to secure some tape between the cap and the spindle so that this thing can't go anywhere. If you have some other device, a little clamp or something that doesn't get in the way with the operation, because it has to travel in a circle, so that whatever you put here can't be wider than this, go ahead. You have to have this secure, top and bottom. So on a 360, 365, you have two caps. Neither of them can be permitted to walk. You have to, with a double-sided workflow, you have to lock everything down. It has to travel straight down. You can't have any movement. You can't have the roll walking on you. Any of that stuff will potentially throw off the accuracy. You want to confidently load the material, send a very long job. Usually what I'm going to do is I'm going to queue up a whole bunch of jobs, let's say 20 of them. And each one of those has 16 or 20 images, and they're going to all go double-sided. And I send them to print automatically. They print each job individually, and it just runs one after another, and I don't have time to babysit it. I'm not going to stand around and watch it. It's got to finish the roll, track accurately, go onto the core exactly right, and then once it's done, I roll it forward, cut it off, feed it back through, and then proceed with step 2, which is printing side B. But you've got to make sure that your core is the right length, you've got to make sure your end caps are secure, and you've got to make sure that you've loaded everything properly. The other thing to take in consideration is the double-sided workflow on this printer, the 500 series, is a little easier. Your distance to the take-up roll is quite short. There's really not much lost media there. And then also, but you have more of a consideration with the cores have to be the same size because you can't adjust this. There is no adjustment. The cores have to be effectively the same. I would say 1/4 of an inch larger on the bottom one tops. You don't want a lot of play. You want things to line up properly. Right? That's setup. So we've covered what to print on, and then we've addressed the setup. Once you have the roll ready to go, that's when we're going to go next into the rip. We're going to call this a double-sided job, and then we're going to set the queue up so that you print jobs in a queue in succession, and everything prints practically. Now, I'm going to do this in Onyx. I'm not going to show this in Caldera and Flexi at this time because I think primarily most people use Onyx, at least for this. Next, I'll set it up for Flexi as soon as I have a moment, and then also do another separate video for Caldera. They have slightly different workflows, but all of the part about choosing the material and loading the material remains the same. And next is we do the rip.